Hannah Whitaker did not know she would leave the palace before sunrise. She only knew the ring on her finger had gone cold. The royal banquet had ended 2 hours ago. At least, that was what the servants believed. The music had softened into something distant and tired beneath the eastern balconies. Nobles had drifted toward guest chambers with wine still warming their faces. The council wing had gone quiet except for the scrape of late chairs and the low voices of men who preferred making decisions after witnesses had left. Hannah remained awake. Of course she did. She stood alone inside the Northern Records room with a stack of alliance documents spread across the long table before her. Trade terms, border vows, winter troop movements, council approvals. 3 unsigned amendments Adrian had forgotten to review before leaving the banquet with Claire Monroe at his side. Again, Hannah dipped her pen into the ink and corrected a calculation in the margin. Carefully, neatly, the way she did most things. No one would notice by morning. That was also the way she did most things. The candle beside her had burned low, bending the shadows across her soft hands. The lunar ring on her finger caught the light whenever she moved. Silver, heavy, engraved with the Blackwell crest. For 6 years, that ring had told the kingdom she stood beside Alpha King Adrian Blackwell. Tonight, it felt less like belonging, more like proof that she had stayed too long. Hannah paused and looked down at it. Her reflection waited in the dark window beyond the table. Fair skin, soft full cheeks, gentle brown eyes shadowed by exhaustion. A body the court women described as sweet when they wanted to avoid calling her ordinary. She had learned to smile at that. She had learned to smile at many things. At Claire Monroe's return. At the council's sudden interest in Claire's opinions. At Adrian's careful distance whenever Hannah entered a room Claire had already brightened. At every whisper that said the first love had come home and the Luna should be wise enough to understand history. Hannah had understood history. She simply had not understood she was expected to step out of it. 3 nights ago, Adrian had come to her chamber after midnight. Not for long. Never for long anymore. But long enough to stand behind her while she sat at the vanity, long enough to rest one hand on her shoulder and say, "Trust me a little longer." His voice had been low, almost tender. Hannah had looked at his reflection then and wanted, foolishly, to believe him. Not completely, not blindly, just enough to finish one more document, host one more dinner, stand through one more morning beside a man who kept asking for patience while giving his future away in pieces. A sound reached her from the garden below. A voice. Adrian's. Hannah's pen stopped moving. The records room window was open a few inches to let out the smell of wax and ink. Beyond it, the palace garden stretched beneath lanterns and thin mist, its stone paths silver under the moon. She should not have heard him, but the night was too quiet, and he was too certain. "When the northern throne is mine," Adrian said, "you will stand beside me." Hannah went still, not shocked, not yet. Her hand lowered from the page. The lunar ring touched the edge of the inkstand with a small, cold click. Below, Claire Monroe laughed softly. Not surprised, not embarrassed. Pleased. Hannah stood without meaning to. The chair made no sound behind her. She moved to the window slowly, carefully, until the garden came into view. Adrian stood beneath the lantern arch in his black ceremonial coat, silver crown absent, but authority still resting on him like a second skin. Claire stood close enough that her white sleeve brushed his. Beautiful, bright, exactly the kind of woman courts remembered. Hannah looked at them for one long moment. Then at the unfinished documents behind her. The alliance papers for the Northern Throne. The future she had spent all night preparing. The future he had just promised to someone else. The ring on her finger felt colder than before. This time, Hannah understood why. The future he promised was not hers. That was the first truth. Not the cruelest. Not the final one. Just the first. Hannah Whitaker stood near the open records room window with one hand resting against the cold stone frame, listening to Alpha King Adrian Blackwell offer Claire Monroe the place Hannah had spent 6 years trying to earn. Below, the palace garden glowed beneath hanging lanterns. Mist softened the hedges. Moonlight silvered the fountain. Everything looked too gentle for betrayal. Adrian stood beneath the archway, his dark formal coat open at the throat, his posture relaxed in a way Hannah rarely saw anymore. With her, he was always tired, distracted, half inside some other problem. With Claire, he looked awake. That hurt before the words did. Claire tilted her face toward him. "And your counsel?" she asked. They will accept me beside you? Adrian's answer came smoothly. They will accept who I choose. Who I choose. Hannah looked down at the lunar ring. For 6 years, that ring had allowed people to call her chosen. Now she understood how fragile that word had always been. A choice could be remade. A promise could be redirected. A wife could become a placeholder if the man beside her never corrected the room quickly enough. Claire stepped closer. You say that as if it will be simple. It will be handled. Handled. Hannah almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because she had been handling things for him all night. The Northern Alliance documents were still open behind her. Her handwriting filled the margins. Her corrections made his treaty usable. Her quiet work would help him take the throne he was now offering Claire a place beside. For a moment, Hannah wanted to laugh. For a moment, she wanted to break every sheet of paper in that room. She did neither. She only listened. 3 nights ago, Adrian had stood behind her at the vanity. Trust me a little longer. His hand had rested on her shoulder. Warm, heavy, familiar enough to make her remember the man she had married before politics learned how to speak through his mouth. Hannah had believed him. Not completely, but enough. Enough to silence her discomfort when Claire sat too close at dinner. Enough to ignore the way Adrian's gaze followed Claire across the ballroom. Enough to tell herself that love did not always look attentive during war season, treaty season, succession season, every season that required Hannah to be patient while another woman became urgent. Below, Claire lowered her voice. What about Hannah? The question entered the night softly, carefully, like a blade wrapped in silk. Hannah's breath stopped. There it was. Not concern, not kindness. A test. Claire wanted the answer spoken aloud. Not assumed. Not hidden in glances. Defined. Hannah stood perfectly still. Her reflection in the window looked calm. Soft face. Pale skin. Full cheeks. Gentle brown eyes that had spent too many years teaching themselves not to ask for what should have been freely given. Adrian did not answer at once. That pause hurt. Then he said, almost gently, Hannah has always understood duty. Duty. The word landed beside the ring like a second chain. Claire was silent. Waiting. She wanted more. Adrian gave it to her. She knows the northern throne requires stability. Hannah's fingers curled against the stone. The window frame bit into her palm. Stability. Another beautiful word men used when they wanted a woman to survive humiliation without naming it. Claire's voice softened further. And her place. The garden seemed to hold its breath. Hannah did too. Adrian exhaled once, as if the answer were simple. As if the woman listening above him had not spent 6 years turning his mistakes into order. She understands her place. The sentence did not echo. It did not need to. It entered Hannah quietly and closed every door behind it. She did not cry. That surprised her most. She did not shake. She did not gasp. She did not press a hand over her mouth like women did in tragic portraits. She only looked at the ring. Silver. Cold. Unmistakably heavy. For 6 years, it had told her where she belonged. Now Adrian had done the same. And for the first time, Hannah believed him. For the first time, Hannah Whitaker saw the lunar ring as a chain. Not because the silver had changed. Not because the Blackwell crest had sharpened overnight. Because her understanding had. She stood inside the Northern Records room with the garden below still glowing beneath lantern light. Adrian's voice fading into the mist. Claire Monroe's silence softer than a smile. She understands her place. The words remained. Not in the garden. Inside her. For 6 years, Hannah had told herself the ring meant trust. A vow. A seat beside him. A promise that even when Adrian grew distant, even when counsels became colder, even when Claire's name returned to the palace like an old song everyone knew but pretended not to hum, the ring still meant she belonged. Now it felt different. Heavy. Circular. Closed. A beautiful thing made to keep her standing where another woman could be placed. Hannah looked at the unfinished documents behind her. Northern trade approvals. Border pledges. Royal witness forms. Everything Adrian would need to secure the throne he had just offered Claire a future beside. Her handwriting covered the margins. Her work strengthened his claim. Her silence protected his image. Her name sat on the final page, waiting to sign as Luna. Hannah walked back to the table. Slowly, very carefully, she took the pen from beside the inkstand and looked at the signature line. Luna Hannah Whitaker Blackwell. The name seemed almost foreign now. Too long. Too heavy. Too full of a woman, she had been trying to remain for a man who had already moved her aside in his mind. Below the window, Claire spoke again. You make it sound as if she will not be hurt. Adrian answered quietly. She will be hurt. Hannah's hand stilled above the page. She has survived worse, he added. The pen did not fall. That was the strange part. Nothing dramatic happened. The candle did not go out. The glass did not crack. The world did not stop to acknowledge that something inside Hannah had been finished in one sentence. She simply placed the pen down and signed. Adrian had always mistaken survival for permission. He had watched her endure counsel whispers and called it grace. Watched her smile through Claire's return and called it maturity. Watched her stand beside him while every room compared her softness to Claire's shine and called it strength. Perhaps she was strong. Perhaps that had been the problem. People loved strong women best when they could keep using them. Hannah turned from the table. Her reflection waited in the window again. Fair skin. Soft full cheeks. A body made warm by curves the court had never known how to praise without diminishing. A face too gentle, they said, for a northern crown. A woman too kind, they said, to understand politics. She understood perfectly now. Politics was what men called betrayal when enough people benefited from it. She heard movement below. Claire stepped closer to Adrian. Hannah could see the pale shape of her sleeve beneath the lantern arch. And if she refuses? Claire asked. Adrian gave a low sound, almost amusement. Hannah does not refuse me. There. The final door. Hannah looked down at the ring. For a moment, she remembered the day Adrian placed it on her finger. He had been younger then. Less tired. Less guarded. His hand had trembled slightly, though no one else saw. You will never stand alone again, he had whispered. She had believed him. And perhaps, at the time, he had believed himself. That almost made it worse. A promise did not need to begin as a lie to become one. Hannah closed her hand over the ring. The silver was cold against her palm. Below, Adrian said something Hannah no longer cared to hear. That surprised her. She had thought she would need every word, every explanation, every final confirmation before allowing herself to leave. But no. The truth had already completed itself. She did not need to be humiliated twice to believe the first wound. Hannah walked toward the records room door. Her steps were soundless against the carpet. At the threshold, she stopped. Not because she hesitated, because she made a choice. The old Hannah would have gone back to her chamber, packed quietly, left the ring on the vanity, disappeared before dawn, and let Adrian discover absence after it was too late. That would have been clean, safe, expected. But tonight, something colder than grief moved through her. Not revenge. Clarity with a spine. Adrian had given away her future in private because he trusted her silence to protect him publicly. Fine. She would not scream. She would not beg. She would not expose him with tears. But she would return what he had made worthless while he could still feel its weight. Hannah opened the door and stepped into the corridor. The palace was nearly empty now. Lamps burned low along the marble walls. Music from the distant banquet had thinned into a few tired notes. Somewhere, servants were clearing wine glasses and pretending not to hear noble gossip. Hannah walked toward the garden stairs. No rush. No trembling. No dramatic breath. Only the quiet certainty of a woman who had stopped negotiating with her own humiliation. At the lower archway, the night air touched her face. Cool. Damp. Alive. Adrian and Claire stood beneath the lanterns. Their conversation paused by the soft sound of Hannah's approach. Claire saw her first. Her expression changed. Not guilt. Not exactly. Calculation interrupted. Adrian turned a second later. Hannah. Her name came out too quickly. Too carefully. He looked at her face, then at her hand, then back at her face. For the first time that night, he looked uncertain. Good. Hannah stepped into the lantern light. The ring remained on her finger. For now, she looked at Claire once. Not with hatred. That would have been too generous. Then she looked at Adrian. Calm. Soft-faced. Full-bodied. Unshaking. The woman he believed would not refuse him. Do not stop on my account, she said quietly. The garden went still. Adrian's jaw tightened. This is not what it seems. Hannah almost smiled. No, she said. It is exactly what it seems. Claire lowered her eyes, but Hannah did not reward the performance by watching it. Adrian took one step toward her. Hannah, listen to me. I did. The answer stopped him. She lifted her hand slowly, and the lunar ring caught the lantern light between them. Silver. Bright. Cold. Every word. Adrian's face changed then. Only slightly. Enough. He knew. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to understand the ground beneath him had shifted. Hannah touched the ring with her other hand. She did not remove it yet. She wanted him to see the moment before it happened. The final second when the symbol still belonged to her. The last breath of a place he had already given away. Then she said, softly enough that he had to listen, "If Claire is the woman who will stand beside you, then give her my place instead. Give her my place instead." Hannah Whitaker said it softly. That was why it cut. Not a scream. Not an accusation. Not a desperate wife trying to make a man deny what she had already heard. Just one calm sentence beneath the palace lanterns, spoken to the Alpha King, who had promised another woman the future Hannah had built for him with tired hands and loyal silence. Adrian Blackwell stared at her. For once, he did not answer quickly. Claire Monroe stood beside him, pale sleeve brushing the edge of his coat, her expression caught somewhere between surprise and satisfaction. She had wanted Hannah to find. She had wanted Adrian to speak Hannah's place aloud. She had not expected Hannah to return it. The garden held its breath. Mist curled low around the marble path. Lantern light trembled over the fountain. Somewhere beyond the hedge, music from the banquet dragged itself through the final notes of a song no one was listening to anymore. Adrian took one step toward her. Hannah. The name sounded careful now, less certain than before. Good. She looked at his face and saw the calculation beginning. The need to make this smaller. Private. Contained. A misunderstanding that could be corrected before it became real. She had watched him do that for years. Turn wounds into timing. Turn betrayal into politics. Turn her pain into something she was expected to carry quietly for the good of the throne. Not tonight. Hannah touched the lunar ring. Adrian's eyes dropped to her hand. His expression sharpened. No, one word. Too late. Hannah almost smiled. Not with humor. With a kind of exhausted mercy. You already did. His jaw tightened. That is not what I was doing. No. She looked toward Claire for the first time. Claire lowered her eyes. A graceful movement. Practiced. Hannah did not hate her. That surprised her less than it should have. Hatred required a kind of energy Claire no longer deserved. Claire had reached for a place Adrian made available. That did not absolve her. But the wound belonged first to the man who opened the door. Hannah looked back at him. You promised her the northern throne. Adrian's face went still. You heard that? Yes. His eyes moved toward the records room above, then back to her. For a brief second, irritation crossed his expression. Not guilt. Irritation. Because she had heard what was meant to stay hidden. That almost finished what little remained. You misunderstood the context, he said. There it was. The old method. Hannah had expected it. Still, the words arrived like a final kindness from fate. One more confirmation that leaving was not cruelty. It was accuracy. I understood enough. Claire spoke then, voice soft. Hannah, I never wanted to hurt you. The sentence floated between them, delicate and useless. Hannah turned her head. Then you should have wanted less. Claire flinched. Adrian's eyes flashed. Do not speak to her that way. Silence fell. Immediate. Absolute. And there it was. Not the promise. Not the garden. Not the ring. That. The instinct to protect Claire from Hannah's one quiet sentence, when he had not protected Hannah from 6 years of slow humiliation. Hannah's face did not change. Inside her, something closed without sound. Adrian seemed to realize it too late. Hannah. No. The word was barely louder than breath. But it stopped him. She looked down at the lunar ring. For 6 years, she had turned it when she was nervous. Pressed it when councilmen ignored her. Touched it when Adrian walked past Claire's name written in old treaty records and pretended not to pause. A habit. A hope. A small silver lie. Hannah slid the ring from her finger. It resisted for half a second where the skin had softened beneath it. Then it came free. The pale circle it left behind looked strangely tender. Strangely alive. Adrian stared at her bare hand, as if he had never imagined it could exist. Hannah stepped closer and held out the ring. He did not take it. So she took his hand. That, finally, made him breathe. His palm was warm. Familiar. Once, that warmth had meant safety. Tonight, it was only skin. She placed the ring in the center of his hand and folded his fingers over it. There, she said softly. Now it is yours to give. Adrian looked at their hands. For one heartbeat, neither moved. Then he tried to catch her fingers as she pulled away. Not forcefully. Not yet. Instinctively. as if some part of him still believed anything Hannah withdrew could be called back by touch. She stepped out of reach. His hand closed around empty air. The ring remained in his other palm. That image seemed to strike him harder than her words. Good. Let him hold the weight. Claire whispered. Adrian. He did not look at her. For the first time that night, his attention remained on Hannah. Fully. Finally. Too late. This is unnecessary, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Hannah tilted her head. Is it? Yes. You are angry. No, you are hurt. Yes. The honesty made him pause. But I am not leaving because I am hurt, she continued. I am leaving because I finally believe you. Adrian's brows drew together. What does that mean? Hannah looked once at the Northern Records room window above them, at the documents she had corrected, at the future she had prepared, at the version of herself still sitting at that table, trying to earn a place already promised away. Then she looked at him. You said I understood my place. His throat moved. Hannah, I do. The garden went still again. She stepped back. One step, then another. I understand it is not beside a man who can offer me to silence and call it duty. Adrian's face changed. Not fully. Not enough. But the first crack appeared. Hannah turned before he could shape it into another explanation. Behind her, Claire stood frozen beneath the lantern arch. Adrian stood with the lunar ring closed in his hand, looking down at the silver as if it had become something dangerous. Hannah, he said. This time, her name sounded less like command, more like fear. She paused at the edge of the garden path, but did not turn around. If you give her my place, she said quietly, make sure she understands what it costs. Then Hannah Whitaker walked back into the palace without the lunar ring, without a crown, and without the last illusion that Adrian Blackwell had ever truly chosen her. The hall went silent for the wrong reason. Not because Hannah Whitaker had screamed. She had not. Not because she had struck Claire Monroe, cursed the throne, or begged Alpha King Adrian Blackwell to deny the promise she had heard beneath the lanterns. She had done none of those things. That was what confused them. By the time Hannah stepped back into the grand hall, the last of the royal banquet had not fully ended. Nobles still lingered near the wine tables. Councilmen stood in low clusters beneath the gold banners. Servants moved quietly between marble columns, collecting abandoned glasses and pretending not to notice the way power always changed shape after midnight. Then they saw her. No lunar ring. No Adrian beside her. No Claire. Just Hannah. Soft-faced. Pale. Full-figured beneath a midnight blue gown. Calm enough to frighten anyone who knew what a woman looked like when she had finally stopped asking to be chosen. The first whisper came from the lower steps. Her ring. Another followed immediately. Where is the lunar ring? Hannah heard them. Of course she did. Court whispers were never as quiet as court people believed. She walked through the center of the hall without slowing. Every step felt strangely clear. Not light. Not painless. Clear. The kind of clarity that arrived when humiliation finished burning through hope and left behind only direction. Near the council table, Elder Samuel Price turned with a folded treaty in his hand. Lady Hannah? Lady. Not Luna. Interesting. Perhaps the room had always known how quickly a title could be removed when a woman stopped wearing its symbol. Hannah looked at him. Yes. His eyes dropped to her bare hand. Then away. The northern documents are unsigned. The elder blinked. And signed. Yes. They require the Luna's witness before morning. Hannah's expression did not change. Then you should find the Luna. Silence. This time complete. Several nobles turned fully toward her. A servant froze near the wine table with a tray in both hands. Elder Price's mouth opened, then closed. He was not used to hearing consequence spoken without apology. Hannah continued past him. That was when Adrian entered the hall. He came from the garden archway with the lunar ring still closed in his hand. Claire followed 2 steps behind him, pale and careful, all softness arranged into damage control. The whispers sharpened. Hannah did not turn. Not immediately. Adrian's voice cut through the room. Hannah. Everyone heard it. Everyone stopped pretending not to. She paused near the staircase. Slowly, she faced him. Adrian stood beneath the archway, black coat dark against the lantern glow, his expression controlled enough to look almost calm to anyone who did not know him. Hannah knew him. The control was thinner than usual. Good. His hand remained closed around the ring. That small fist told the room more than any announcement could have. He crossed toward her. This is not the place. Hannah looked around the hall. At the elders who needed her signature. At the nobles waiting to see whether she would break prettily. At Claire standing behind Adrian. Close enough to be protected and far enough to look innocent. Then she looked back at him. You are right, she said softly. It never was. A few people inhaled. Adrian stopped. The words had landed somewhere he had not expected. This is a private matter, he said. No, her answer was gentle. Absolute. You made it political when you offered my place to someone else. Claire lowered her eyes. Adrian's jaw tightened. I did not offer your place. Hannah's gaze moved to the ring in his hand. The room followed it. His fingers tightened around the silver. Too late to hide it. Then why are you holding it? She asked. No one breathed. Adrian looked down. For the first time, the court saw their alpha king without an answer ready. Beta Ethan Brooks stood near the council table, silent until then. His eyes moved from Adrian's closed fist to Hannah's bare hand, then to the unsigned documents on the table. Understanding passed across his face. Not shock, grief, because he understood what others did not yet. This was not a scene. This was an ending. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice as if volume could restore privacy. You are upset. We will discuss this upstairs. Hannah almost smiled. There it was again. The assumption that she could be moved into a smaller room and made easier to manage. No, she said. His eyes sharpened. No, I am done being discussed in rooms where my place is decided before I enter. The sentence moved through the hall like a cold wind. Elder Price looked away. Claire's face tightened. Adrian went very still. Hannah turned toward the council table and picked up the unsigned Northern Treaty. The document was heavy with wax seals and expectation. Her name waited near the bottom. Luna Hannah Whitaker Blackwell. She looked at it for one long second, then placed it back on the table without signing. The woman who stands beside the Northern throne may witness it, she said. Claire's lips parted. Adrian's voice dropped. Enough. Hannah looked at him. For 6 years, that word had worked. Enough. Enough questions. Enough discomfort. Enough of her trying to pull tenderness from a man who rationed it like political favor. Tonight, the word passed through her and found nothing to hold. Yes, she said. It is. Then she turned and walked toward the staircase. No one stopped her. Not the elders. Not Claire. Not the servants. Not even Adrian. Perhaps he still believed she was walking to her room to cry. Perhaps he thought the night had become too public and morning would soften it into something negotiable. Perhaps every powerful man needed one final moment of arrogance before the truth arrived. At the first stare, Hannah heard Claire whisper behind him. Adrian, should I go after her? Hannah stopped. Only then did she look back. Adrian had not answered. That pause was enough. Hannah's eyes met Claire's across the hall. No, she said calmly. You wanted my place. Stay in it. Claire went pale. The court heard. Good. Let them. Not because Hannah wanted revenge. Because some truths only survived when spoken in rooms that could not pretend they were never said. Hannah continued up the staircase. Her steps were quiet, steady, unhurried. Below, the hall remained frozen around the Alpha King, the first love, the unsigned treaty, and the ring that no longer had a hand willing to wear it. Beta Ethan Brooks moved first. He approached Adrian slowly. My king, he said under his breath. Adrian did not look at him. What? Ethan's gaze lifted toward the staircase where Hannah had disappeared. His voice was low, careful, certain. She is not angry. Adrian's fingers tightened around the ring. Then what is she? Ethan looked at the empty place where Luna had stood. Finished. The words settled into the hall. Adrian said nothing. Above them, Hannah Whitaker reached the royal corridor alone. The music below did not resume. Neither did the whispers. For once, silence followed her with respect instead of expectation. She walked toward her chamber without the ring, without the title, and without the burden of making a room comfortable after it had watched her be replaced. Before dawn, Hannah Whitaker left without a letter. That mattered. A letter could be answered. A letter could be folded, argued with, held beneath candlelight by a man who wanted her pain to arrive in sentences he could rearrange until it became less damning. Hannah gave Adrian Blackwell no such kindness. Her chamber was quiet when she entered. Too quiet for a room that had held 6 years of waiting. The candle beside her vanity still burned from earlier, the flame bent low in gold. Her ceremonial Luna cloak rested across the chair. The Northern Alliance files remained unfinished in the records room. The bed had not been touched. Hannah stood in the doorway for a moment. Not because she hesitated, because she wanted to see clearly what she was leaving. The walls were pale stone, the curtains silver, the wardrobe filled with gowns chosen for ceremonies, where she stood beside Adrian and tried not to notice who his eyes searched for first. Everything in the room was beautiful. Almost nothing was hers. She crossed to the vanity and opened the lowest drawer. One coin pouch, one plain dress, a small knife in a leather sheath. Her personal journal. Nothing royal. Nothing that carried the Blackwell crest. Nothing that would let them call her departure theft when truth became too difficult to face. She folded each item carefully into a small travel bag. Her hands did not shake. That surprised her less now. The shaking belonged to women who still hoped the damage could be stopped. Hannah was past that. She looked at her bare finger. The pale circle where the lunar ring had rested seemed brighter than the skin around it. Tender. Exposed. Free in a way that hurt. A soft knock touched the door. Hannah did not turn. "Come in, Lily." Lily Carter entered with a folded shawl in her arms and stopped immediately. The shawl slipped slightly in her hands. "My lady, not your grace. Not Luna." Lily heard what had happened, then. Or enough of it. Palaces moved secrets faster than blood. Hannah placed the journal into the bag. Lily's eyes went to the open drawer, the traveling cloak, the empty ring finger. Her face crumpled. "You are leaving." "Yes." "At this hour?" "Yes." Lily swallowed hard. "Should I inform the Alpha King?" Hannah paused. Below them, far away, the palace still held the silence she had left in the hall. Perhaps Adrian remained there with the ring in his hand. Perhaps Claire stood beside him. Perhaps the council had already begun deciding how to soften the story before morning. Hannah closed the travel bag. No, Lily's breath shook. "He will be furious." "Yes. He will come after you. Probably. He will say you embarrassed him." Hannah looked toward the mirror. Her reflection met her calmly. Soft face, fair skin, full cheeks. A body the court had dressed for symbolism and ignored as a woman. "No," she said quietly. "He embarrassed himself. I only stopped covering it." Lily pressed one hand to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes, but she held them back badly. Hannah crossed the room and took the shawl from her hands. Then she wrapped it around Lily's shoulders instead. "Do not cry for me here. I do not know how not to." That almost broke her. Almost. Hannah touched Lily's cheek once. "You will remember nothing until morning." Lily shook her head. "I cannot lie well." "You do not need to lie well. You only need to survive being questioned." "My lady, listen." The word was soft, but Lily went still. Hannah's voice lowered. "You brought me a shawl. I dismissed you. You saw nothing else. You know nothing else. That is all." Lily nodded through tears. Hannah lifted the gray traveling cloak from the chair and placed it over her own shoulders. The plain wool swallowed the blue silk of her gown, covered the curve of her body, hid the absence of the ring from careless eyes. In the mirror, Luna disappeared by degrees. First the jewels, then the crest, then the expectation. What remained was Hannah. Only Hannah. She found she could breathe better that way. At the door, Lily caught her sleeve. "Where will you go?" Hannah looked at the dark corridor beyond. "The South Road first. And then, somewhere my place is not decided before I arrive." Lily let out a sound too small to be a sob. Hannah squeezed her hand once and released it. No dramatic farewell. No promise to write. Promises had become dangerous things tonight. She stepped into the corridor. The royal wing slept poorly around her. Lamps burned low. Servants moved in distant rooms, careful and frightened. Somewhere below, a door closed too hard, then silence rushed in to cover it. Hannah walked toward the old physician's stairs. Not the main passage. Not the Queen's Hall. Those belonged to the woman Adrian thought she still was. The physician's passage was narrow, cold, and rarely guarded after midnight. She had learned of it during the plague winter, when she carried tonic to fever rooms while councilmen praised Adrian for steady leadership. Another quiet thing no one remembered. At the bottom of the stairs, she stopped once. Not because she heard footsteps, because she felt the palace behind her like a hand. Years of duty, years of patience, years of becoming smaller so a king could feel less cruel. Hannah placed one palm against the stone wall, then took it away. The south gate opened to rain-wet air and the smell of pine beyond the palace roads. A young guard blinked when he saw her. "My lady." Hannah lifted her hood. "Open it." He hesitated. "Does His Majesty know?" She looked at him. No anger. No fear. Only the kind of calm that made disobedience feel dangerous. He knows where he placed me. The guard swallowed, then opened the gate. Before dawn touched the palace towers, Hannah Whitaker stepped through alone. No ring, no title, no letter. Behind her, the gate closed with a soft iron sound. Ahead of her, the south. Adrian Blackwell reached Hannah's chamber, still holding the ring. That was the first mistake. Not going after her sooner. Not answering Claire too late. Not standing in the grand hall with every noble watching while his Luna walked away without turning back. The ring. He should not have still had it in his hand. It made the impossible physical. Silver. Cold. Real. His fingers had closed around it so tightly that the crest had pressed a mark into his palm. He did not notice until Beta Ethan Brooks followed him into the royal corridor and quietly said, "My king, you are bleeding." Adrian looked down. A thin line of red crossed his skin beneath the ring. For one strange second, he almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because Hannah had returned the ring without raising her voice, and still it had managed to cut him. Good. Let it. He reached her door before sunrise. The corridor outside was dim, the lamps burned low, and the silence around Hannah's chamber felt wrong before he touched the handle. No movement inside. No candle glow beneath the door. No soft rustle of fabric. No quiet footsteps crossing the room, because Hannah always woke before anyone came looking for her. Adrian knocked once. Hannah. No answer. He knocked again. Harder. The sound traveled down the empty hall and returned with nothing attached. His jaw tightened. "She is angry," he said. Ethan said nothing behind him. Adrian hated that silence. "She had reason," Ethan replied at last. Adrian turned his head. The beta's face was controlled, but not empty. There was something in his eyes Adrian did not want to name. Concern. Not for him. For her. Adrian pushed the door open. The chamber was spotless. Too spotless. That was the second mistake he recognized too late. A woman who meant to return left traces of emotion behind. A shawl fallen over a chair. Jewelry abandoned in disorder. A tear-stained note. A drawer left open because anger made hands careless. Hannah had left none of that. The bed had not been slept in. The vanity was cleared of everything except the small crystal comb she never liked, but always kept because his mother had given it to her. The ceremonial Luna cloak remained folded across the chair. Her jewels were arranged in their boxes. Her royal slippers stood beneath the wardrobe, untouched. Nothing broken. Nothing stolen. Nothing rushed. Adrian stepped into the room slowly. Hannah. The name was useless here. It touched nothing. Ethan remained at the doorway, wise enough not to enter a ruin that belonged to another man. Adrian opened the wardrobe. Gowns. Court dresses. Winter cloaks embroidered with Blackwell silver. Everything the palace had given her. Still there. He opened the lower drawer. Empty. Not fully. Only the things that had been hers were gone. Plain dress. Old journal. Coin pouch. Travel knife. The gray cloak Lily Carter wore sometimes when carrying laundry through the lower halls. His breathing changed. Only slightly. Enough. She will return, he said. Ethan's voice was quiet. My king. Adrian looked back. The beta's gaze moved once around the room, then to the ring in Adrian's hand. No, she will not. The sentence entered the chamber like an unwelcome witness. Adrian's wolf stirred. Sharp. Angry. Afraid. You presume too much. I watched her face in the hall, Ethan said. Adrian's hand tightened around the ring. She was humiliated. No, Ethan's answer came too quickly. Too certainly. She was finished. Adrian looked toward the vanity mirror. For a moment, he saw her standing in the garden again. Soft face calm beneath the lanterns. Bare hand after the ring slid free. Give her my place instead. His throat tightened. She should have waited for me to explain. Ethan did not move. Would you have explained? Adrian turned. The question should have been disrespectful. It felt worse. Fair. He had explanations ready even now. The Northern throne required careful alliances. Claire understood the Northern court. Hannah had always known duty mattered. The garden was not the place for final decisions. He had not meant to replace her. Not publicly. Not yet. Adrian closed his eyes. Not yet. The truth inside those two words was uglier than any accusation Hannah could have made. A knock sounded softly behind Ethan. Lily Carter stood there, pale and trembling, her hands folded too tightly before her. Adrian looked at her. When did she leave? Lily swallowed. My king, I brought her a shawl. She dismissed me. That is not what I asked. Her eyes dropped. Adrian stepped forward. Ethan moved slightly, not blocking him, reminding him he was not alone with a frightened servant. That irritated Adrian, then shamed him. He stopped. When? He asked again, quieter. Lily's voice shook. Before dawn. Through which gate? I do not know. The lie was poor. So poor it was almost brave. Adrian studied her face. Hannah had protected the girl even while leaving. Of course she had. Even in the middle of her own humiliation, she had arranged silence around someone smaller than herself. The realization landed without warning. How many things had Hannah protected while he called her patient? How many people had hidden beneath the gentleness he mistook for weakness? He looked back at the empty room. Search the palace, he ordered. Ethan did not move. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Now. Ethan bowed. As you command. But his face said what his mouth did not. Too late. By mid-morning, the palace knew. Not officially. Never officially. Palaces did not need announcements to bleed secrets. The Luna had returned her ring. The Luna had left before dawn. The Northern Treaty remained unsigned. The Alpha King's first love had stayed in the palace. And Hannah Whitaker was gone. Adrian sat alone in the records room where she had spent her final night working. The documents lay exactly where she had left them. Unsigned. Corrected. Completed except for the one signature no one had valued until it was missing. He touched the margin where Hannah's handwriting curved neatly beside a calculation. She had fixed the troop numbers. He had not even known they were wrong. On the final page, her name waited. Luna Hannah Whitaker Blackwell. A line beneath it. Empty. Adrian stared at that emptiness longer than he meant to. Claire entered quietly near noon. He smelled her perfume before she spoke. Adrian. He did not look up. She left, Claire said. Yes. She was hurt. His hand closed around the pen. Yes. She may come back when she calms. The room went still. The same words, dressed differently. She will understand. She knows her place. Hannah does not refuse me. She may come back. Adrian slowly looked up. Claire stopped. For the first time since her return, he saw not the woman he had once loved, but the mirror she had held up to the worst parts of him. The parts that enjoyed being chosen without being questioned. The parts that wanted Hannah steady and Claire shining. Duty and desire arranged conveniently around his crown. No, he said. Claire's expression changed. No. She will not come back because she calms. Claire's lips parted. Something defensive gathered in her face. Adrian looked at the unsigned treaty. She was calm when she left. That was what finally frightened him. Not rage. Not tears. Calm. A calm that had packed only what belonged to her and left behind everything he had mistaken for loyalty. Ethan entered before Claire could answer. My king. Adrian stood. You found her. A guard at the south gate saw a woman in a gray cloak before dawn. Adrian's heart struck once. Hard. And she ordered the gate opened. Adrian looked at Lily, still standing at the far doorway. He knows where he placed me. The words had already reached him through the frightened guard's report. Ethan continued. She took the south road. To where? We do not know yet. Adrian stepped toward the door. Ready my horse. Claire followed him. Adrian, the Northern Council arrives tonight. The treaty. He turned so sharply she stopped. The treaty is unsigned because the Luna whose witness it required left after I handed her place away in all but name. Do not speak to me about the Northern Council. Claire went pale. This time, no one protected her from the silence. Not even him. Adrian walked out with Hannah's ring in his hand, the unsigned treaty behind him, and the first true understanding beginning to form. She had not left to be chased. She had left because he had made staying impossible without making it look cruel enough for others to stop him. By afternoon, riders found the first sign. A stable hand south of the palace had seen a woman in a gray cloak trade a gold hairpin for a horse. No crest, no escort, no title used. Only Hannah. By evening, a second report arrived. She had crossed the lower ridge road. By nightfall, the final report reached him. A woman matching Hannah's description had been received at the border of Marcus Reed's territory. Received. Not captured. Not detained. Received. Adrian stood in the hall with the ring still cutting into his palm and finally understood the meaning of an empty room. It was not absence. It was judgment. And Hannah had delivered it without writing a single word. Hannah Whitaker reached Marcus Reed's border at dawn with no crown, no ring, and no desire to be claimed by another man. That was the first thing Marcus seemed to understand. Not because she explained it. She did not. By the time she arrived at the southern boundary, the sky had turned pale and colorless above the pine road. Mist rested low across the field. Her borrowed horse breathed hard beneath her, and mud had dried against the hem of her gown where the gray cloak failed to cover it. She looked nothing like a Luna. Good. The title had always entered rooms before she did. This morning, only Hannah arrived. 2 reed guards stepped from the trees before she reached the boundary stones. One lifted a hand. The other looked toward her bare finger, then her face, then the road behind her. Recognition sharpened his expression. State your name. Hannah Whitaker. The younger guard hesitated. Blackwell Luna? The words touched the morning like something old and unwanted. Hannah's fingers tightened briefly around the reins. No, the guard blinked. She repeated it, softer. No, a different voice spoke from beyond the boundary. Let her answer only once. Both guards stepped aside immediately. Alpha Marcus Reed walked out from the line of pines in a dark gray coat. No crown, no ceremonial silver, no display of power beyond the simple fact that everyone near him grew still. Hannah knew him from treaty tables and whispered warnings. Adrian called him difficult. The council called him unpredictable. Claire once called him dangerous with the fascinated tone of someone who had never been truly unsafe. Marcus Reed was tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, and quiet in a way that did not ask permission to fill the space. But unlike Adrian, his silence did not feel like expectation. It felt like room. He stopped several feet away from her horse. Not close enough to touch. Not close enough to make her lean back. Hannah noticed. His gaze moved once over her muddy cloak, the travel bag tied behind the saddle, her bare hand, her tired face. No pity appeared. Only assessment. Good. Pity would have made her feel breakable. Marcus looked toward the road behind her. Is anyone following you? Not yet. Will they? Yes. His eyes returned to hers. Do you need shelter? He asked. Or do you need to be claimed? The question was so unexpected that Hannah almost forgot how tired she was. She stared at him. For 6 years, every room had asked what she belonged to. Adrian's throne, the Luna title, the Northern Treaty, the Blackwell name, the place she was expected to understand. No one had asked whether belonging was what she wanted. Hannah lowered herself from the horse carefully. Her legs ached when her boots touched the ground, but she did not sway. Marcus did not move to steady her. That, too, was a kindness. She lifted her chin. Shelter, she said. Then, after one quiet breath, I am done being claimed. The Reed guards went very still. Marcus held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Then you have shelter. No oath. No hand extended. No dramatic promise. Just a boundary opening because she had asked for it. Hannah stepped across the stones into Reed territory. Nothing happened. No lightning split the sky. No bond tore at her ribs. No invisible hand dragged her backward to the palace where Adrian still held her ring. Only the quiet crunch of gravel beneath her boots. Only the strange, frightening relief of moving forward without permission. Marcus turned and walked beside her toward the guardhouse. Again, he did not offer his arm. Again, he did not touch her. Hannah realized her body had been waiting for some kind of demand. A question. An explanation. A price. Instead, a healer met them at the door with warm tea and a blanket. An older woman with silver-streaked hair took Hannah's horse without asking who had paid for it. A young guard carried her travel bag inside and placed it where she could see it. Nothing was taken out of her sight. That detail nearly undid her. She sat in a plain wooden chair near the stove, both hands wrapped around the cup. The heat hurt her cold fingers. She welcomed it. Marcus stood near the window while the healer checked Hannah's pulse and asked whether she had eaten. No, Hannah said. The healer gave her a look. Not scolding. Practical. Then bread first. Questions later. Hannah almost laughed. Almost. After the healer left, silence settled between her and Marcus. This silence did not press. It waited. Hannah looked at the cup in her hands. You are not asking why I came. I assume you will tell me if I need to know. If Adrian comes? Marcus's expression remained calm. Then I will ask whether you want to see him. The cup stilled in her hands. Hannah looked up. And if I say no? Then he does not see you. Simple. Impossible. Her throat tightened. Even if he claims I am his Luna? Marcus's gaze lowered briefly to her bare hand. Then back to her face. Are you? The question had no challenge in it. Only truth. Hannah looked at the pale ring mark on her finger. A ghost of silver. A ghost of 6 years. No. Marcus nodded. Then that is the answer. For the first time since leaving the palace, Hannah closed her eyes. Not to hide tears. To keep herself inside her own body. It felt unfamiliar to be believed without proof. By noon, she had been given a small guest room above the border hall. No lock on the outside. A lock on the inside. A wash basin. Dry clothes. A tray of food she did not have to earn by making herself useful first. Hannah stood in the center of the room and did not know what to do with kindness that came without expectation. So she sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Quietly. Not for Adrian. Not for the ring. For the woman who had accepted so little for so long that a locked door from the inside felt like mercy. Near sunset, a horn sounded from the lower road. One note. Then another. Hannah stood before the knock came. The older healer entered. Alpha Reed asked whether you wished to receive a visitor. Hannah already knew. Her body knew before her mind did. Adrian. The name moved through her like an old wound touched by cold air. She looked toward the window. Outside, beyond the boundary stones, a black horse stood on the southern road. Adrian Blackwell had dismounted beside it. He wore no crown, only dark riding clothes and exhaustion he did not yet know how to carry. In his hand, silver caught the last light. The ring. Of course. Hannah breathed in. Once. Twice. Then she turned from the window. I will see him outside. The healer nodded. Alone. Hannah paused. For years, alone had meant vulnerable. Here, it seemed to mean choice. No, she said. Not alone. When Hannah stepped outside, Marcus Reed was waiting near the boundary stones. Not in front of her. Not behind her like a shadow. Beside her, but far enough that every step remained hers. Adrian saw her and moved forward immediately. Marcus lifted one hand. Adrian stopped. The old Adrian would have taken the gesture as insult. This one looked at Marcus's hand, then at Hannah's face, and stayed where he was. That was new. Not enough, but new. For a moment, no one spoke. The border lay between them. A line of stones. A line of choice. Adrian's eyes went first to her face, then to her bare finger, then to Marcus. Jealousy passed across him. Hannah saw it. She also saw him swallow it. Good. He had learned at least one thing on the road. Hannah, he said. Her name sounded rough now. Not commanding. Not smooth. Rough. She waited. He lifted his hand slightly, and the Luna ring glinted in his palm. I brought this. I know. His fingers closed around it again. I came to bring you home. There it was. The old mistake in cleaner clothes. Hannah looked at him across the boundary. Soft-faced. Pale. Full-bodied beneath a borrowed gray cloak. Tired beyond shame. Calm beyond reach. No, she said. Adrian's jaw tightened. Hannah, no, she repeated. You came to return me to the place you gave away. The words went still between them. Marcus did not speak. He did not need to. Adrian looked down at the ring as if it had betrayed him by becoming evidence. I did not give you away. Hannah's voice remained gentle. You did. You just expected me to remain where you left me. For the first time, Adrian had no answer ready. And Hannah, standing in another alpha's territory without being claimed by anyone, understood that silence could finally protect her instead of him. Adrian Blackwell came too late to offer Hannah Whitaker her place back. He understood that before she said it. Not fully, not with the kind of understanding that could change the past, but enough to feel the boundary stones between them as something more than territory. They were not simply Reed land and Blackwell land. They were before and after. Before the ring left her finger. After he held it too late. Before Hannah still waited for him to choose her. After she decided his choice no longer mattered. The evening wind moved through the pines behind her, lifting the edge of her borrowed gray cloak. She stood beside Marcus Reed without leaning on him. That detail unsettled Adrian more than if Marcus had held her hand. If Marcus had claimed her, Adrian could have hated him. If Marcus had touched what Adrian had lost, Adrian could have turned grief into anger and called it protection. But Marcus only stood there. Quiet. Present. Respectful. Giving Hannah room. That made him harder to blame. Adrian looked at the Luna ring in his palm. The silver crest had dried blood in one groove where it had cut him during the ride south. A small wound. Insultingly small, considering what he had done. I was wrong, he said. Hannah's face did not change. No satisfaction. No surprise. No softening. Just acknowledgement that a fact had finally arrived. Yes. The answer was worse than anger. Anger might have given him something to answer. This gave him only truth. Adrian swallowed. I should not have spoken to Claire that way. Hannah's eyes stayed on his. That way. He heard the weakness immediately. Not even wrong. Small. Cowardly. He forced himself to continue. I should not have promised her anything that belonged to you. Something moved in Hannah's expression then. Not pain. A tired kind of clarity. My place did not belong to me if you could promise it to someone else. The words went through him cleanly. Marcus Reed's guards remained still near the tree line. The road behind Adrian stayed empty. He had ordered Ethan to remain at the lower ridge, far enough not to make this a royal demand. For once, he had come with no audience to manage, no counsel to impress, no Claire to protect, no Hannah to quiet. Only the consequences. I did not mean to replace you, Adrian said. Hannah looked at the ring, then back at him. But you prepared for it. Silence. There it was. The part he had avoided even in his own mind. He had not declared Claire Luna. He had not signed a decree. He had not taken Hannah's rooms, crown, or seat. Not yet. But he had made space for betrayal before naming it betrayal. He had imagined Hannah enduring it because she always had. He had imagined Claire beside him because part of him wanted a future unburdened by the woman who had witnessed every failure that built his crown. Hannah had been the wife of his hard years. Claire had returned like a memory of easier ones. He had mistaken nostalgia for destiny, and Hannah had paid for it. Adrian lowered his head. Yes, he said. The admission seemed to surprise them both. Hannah breathed in slowly. For a moment, the boarder grew quieter. Then she said, That is why I left. He looked up. Because of Claire? No. The answer came without hesitation. Claire was only the woman you were willing to wound me for. Adrian's hand closed around the ring. Hannah continued, voice calm enough to make each word permanent. I left because when I heard you say I understood my place, I realized you truly believed I had accepted being smaller beside you. His throat tightened. Hannah, no. Let me finish. He stopped. Not because he wanted to. Because for the first time, her refusal mattered more than his impulse. Hannah took one step closer to the boundary stones. Still on Reed soil. Still beyond his reach. For 6 years, I signed your treaties. Smoothed your counsels. Stood beside you when your temper made enemies faster than your crown could silence them. I hosted nobles who looked through me. I smiled at Claire's name before Claire ever returned. I waited through every season where you said duty came first. Her voice did not break. That made it harder to bear. And when you finally spoke of the future, Adrian, you spoke to her. The ring felt too heavy now, too small to hold so much ruin. I still need you, he said. It was honest. It was also the wrong thing. He knew at the moment Hannah's eyes cooled. Being needed after being replaced is not love. The sentence struck the evening still. Behind her, Marcus Reed looked away, not from discomfort, but respect, as if some truths deserved not to be watched too closely when they entered a person. Adrian stared at Hannah. He had needed her. God, he had needed her. Needed her handwriting beside his signatures. Needed her calm after council storms. Needed her soft voice at dinners where alliances would have cracked without her. Needed her to stand steady so he could appear stronger than he was. But had he loved her well? Not privately. Not where it counted. Not in the moments when love should have become protection. He thought of Claire in the garden. Do not speak to her that way. The memory burned. One quiet sentence from Hannah, and he had defended Claire. 6 years of whispers against Hannah, and he had defended silence. Adrian's voice roughened. I failed you. Yes. Again, no mercy. No cruelty either. Just the shape of the truth. He looked at Marcus. The rival alpha met his gaze without challenge. That somehow made the humiliation worse. Marcus did not look like a man who had won. He looked like a man making sure Hannah did not have to stand alone unless she wanted to. Adrian turned back to her. Come back, he said, softer now. Not as before. Not to be silent. I will make it right. Hannah's expression shifted. For one dangerous second, he thought it might be sadness. Then he understood. It was grief for the woman who once would have wanted those words more than breath. My place is not something you get to offer back, she said. The words closed around him. Not loudly. Not angrily. Finally, Adrian looked down at the ring. What am I supposed to do with this? Hannah's gaze followed his. The Luna ring lay in his palm, like a question no one could answer for him. Keep it. His chest tightened. I do not want it. Neither do I. That hurt more than if she had thrown it into the river. At least destruction would have been passion. This was release. Complete. Unadorned. Hannah looked toward the road behind him. You should return before your council invents a story that makes this easier for you. I do not care about the council. You did last night. He flinched. Good. She saw it. She did not apologize. Adrian deserved the wound of accuracy. What will you do? He asked. Hannah looked at the reed border house behind her, then at Marcus, then at the darkening sky. I will rest. The answer was simple. Almost too simple for the damage it repaired. Adrian could not remember the last time he had heard her say anything she wanted without attaching it to someone else's need. Rest. Not revenge. Not power. Not another crown. Rest. That was what he had cost her first. Marcus stepped forward slightly. Not between them. Only near enough to mark the conversation's end if Hannah wanted it. She did. Adrian felt it before she moved. The old instinct in him rose, desperate and useless. Stop her. Take her hand. Say something strong enough. But every strong thing he had ever said had become another wall around her. So he stayed still. Hannah turned. After 2 steps, she paused. Not because of him. Because she chose to. She looked back over her shoulder. If you truly want to repair something, begin with the women who are still inside your palace. Adrian went still. Lily, Hannah said. The servants who hear everything and survive by pretending not to. The council wives who are traded into silence. The girls taught that being useful is safer than being respected. Her eyes held his. Do not make another woman earn kindness by leaving. He could not speak. She nodded once, as if accepting the only answer he had left. Then she walked toward the reed border house. Marcus fell in a step beside her, close enough to guard, far enough not to claim. Adrian watched them go. Hannah did not look back again. Not once. The door opened. Warm light spilled across her face. For one final second, he saw her clearly. Soft, tired, unclaimed, free in a way that had nothing to do with him. Then the door closed. The road behind Adrian waited. The palace waited. Claire waited. The unsigned Northern Treaty waited. The empty Luna chamber waited. All the things he had once believed were the center of his life remained exactly where he had left them. But Hannah did not. Adrian mounted his horse after the lamps inside the reed border house had dimmed. The ring stayed in his palm. He did not put it in his pocket. Let it cut. Let it mark him. Let the silver remind him that Hannah had not left because Claire was more beautiful, more polished, more suited to a northern throne. She had left because he had made love feel like a position that could be reassigned. And by the time he came to offer it back, Hannah Whitaker had already chosen a place no king could give her. Herself. The palace did not collapse when Hannah Whitaker left. That was what Adrian Blackwell noticed first. The towers still stood. The guards still changed shifts. The council still gathered beneath the gold banners with their stiff collars, guarded faces, and carefully rewritten questions. The kingdom did not fall into ruin by noon. That would have been easier. A collapse would have made his guilt dramatic enough for everyone to recognize. Stone breaking, banners burning, wolves howling beneath a wounded moon. Instead, everything continued. Badly, quietly, with small failures gathering like dust in rooms Hannah used to clean before anyone saw them. The Northern Council arrived that evening to find the treaty and signed. Elder Samuel Price attempted to explain that the Luna had been delayed by personal matters. The Northern ambassador looked at the empty witness line, then at Adrian, then at Claire Monroe, who stood near the side arch in a pale gown chosen too carefully for a woman claiming not to want attention. Personal matters, the ambassador repeated. Adrian did not look at Claire. No, he said. The room stilled. Elder Price's eyes widened slightly. Adrian placed both hands on the council table. The Luna did not sign because I failed to honor the position I asked her to hold. No one moved. It was not an apology. Not enough. But it was the first time Adrian had spoken the truth in a room designed to survive without it. Claire's face turned pale. Elder Price cleared his throat. My king, perhaps this should be addressed in private. Adrian looked at him. How many private rooms did this court use to make Hannah smaller? The elder had no answer. Good. Adrian was beginning to understand that silence was not always dignity. Sometimes it was architecture, built carefully, maintained by everyone who benefited from someone else being quiet. He looked down at the treaty. Hannah's handwriting marked the margins. Corrected numbers. Adjusted supply routes. Warnings about winter roads the northern commanders had ignored. Her work remained on every page. even without her signature. That was the cruelty of it. She was still holding the throne together after leaving it. Adrian closed the treaty. This agreement will not proceed until the witness structure is corrected. The Northern ambassador frowned. Corrected how? Luna authority will no longer be decorative. Elder Price inhaled sharply. Adrian continued before fear could dress itself as tradition. If a Luna is required to witness a treaty, her counsel will be required before the terms are drafted. If her name carries political weight, her voice will carry legal weight. No woman in this palace will be used as a seal after men finish deciding her value. The room went very quiet. Claire stared at him. Not with love, with alarm. Adrian finally understood the difference. Claire had wanted the place beside him, not the weight Hannah had carried inside it. That thought should have made him angry. Instead, it made him ashamed. Because he had wanted the same thing from Hannah. Presence without resistance. Labor without recognition. Loyalty without protection. After the council dismissed, Adrian walked alone to the lower servants' hall. The servants stood when he entered. Too quickly, too fearfully. Lily Carter dropped a folded sheet from her hands. Adrian stopped at the doorway. He had never noticed how small the room was. Low ceiling, plain benches, cold tea, hands that kept the palace alive, folded tight because a king had entered and fear had taught them stillness. He looked at Lily. She looked as if she expected punishment. For helping Hannah. For knowing too much. For loving the woman he had failed. Adrian took a breath. Then another. I will not ask where she went. Lily's eyes lifted. I will not punish anyone who aided her. A few servants looked at one another. No one believed him yet. He deserved that. Adrian placed a folded decree on the nearest table. From tonight, no servant, attendant, or lady of the court may be questioned privately by council members without a witness of their choosing. No woman in this palace will be threatened into silence over matters of royal conduct. Lily stared at the decree as if it might disappear. Adrian's voice lowered. Hannah told me to begin with the women still inside the palace. The name moved through the servants' hall like warmth. Painful warmth. Lily's mouth trembled. She would be glad, she whispered. Adrian looked away. No, he said quietly. She would ask why it required her leaving. No one answered. That was fair. Later, he returned to Hannah's chamber. He did not enter at first. He stood outside the door with the Luna ring in his palm and listened to the silence he had once mistaken for peace. Inside, the room remained spotless. The ceremonial cloak still lay folded across the chair. The jewels still rested in their boxes. The bed still looked untouched. A preserved absence. A judgment that did not need to speak. He crossed to the vanity and placed the ring beside the crystal comb. Then stopped. No, that was wrong. The room was no longer hers. Leaving the ring there felt like asking the room to keep waiting in her place. Adrian picked it up again. The silver had warmed from his hand and cooled again in the air. He closed his fingers around it, but not tightly this time. The point was not to bleed. The point was to remember. At midnight, Claire came to the chamber door. She did not step inside. For once, she waited to be invited. Adrian did not invite her. You humiliated me today, she said. He almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the sentence arrived wearing the same blindness he had worn last night. Did I? You made it seem as if I was trying to take what belonged to Hannah. Adrian looked at the empty room. Were you not? Claire's face tightened. You told me there was space for me. The words struck harder than accusation. Because they were true. He had made space. Quietly. Cowardly. One overlooked dinner at a time. One delayed reassurance at a time. One refusal to defend Hannah at a time. Yes, he said. I did. Claire stared at him, surprised by the admission. Adrian turned to face her fully. And that was my failure. Not Hannah's. Claire's eyes shone, but he could no longer tell whether the tears were grief or calculation. Perhaps both. People were rarely only one thing. What happens to me now? She asked. A day ago, Adrian would have heard the question as need. Tonight, he heard the trap inside it. Another woman asking him to define her place. Another chance to repeat the same sin with a different softness. That is for you to decide, he said. Claire's expression faltered. I am not offering you Hannah's seat. Her lips parted. And I am not offering you a smaller one in secret. Silence stood between them. For the first time, Claire looked less like a returned dream and more like a woman who had built her hope on someone else's erasure. Adrian did not hate her. That would have been easier. He simply saw her clearly. Too late for Hannah. Still necessary. Claire turned away without another word. Adrian remained in the doorway of the empty chamber until dawn began to gray the windows. By morning, 3 decrees carried his seal. One granting legal authority to any future Luna before treaty witness. One protecting palace women from private coercion. One requiring council records to name the contributions of those whose labor sustained royal decisions. Elder Price called them dangerous. The Northern ambassador called them unusual. Beta Ethan Brooks called them overdue. Adrian called them nothing. Naming them would have made them sound noble. They were not noble. They were repairs made after the person who deserved them most no longer needed them from him. At sunrise, he walked to the council hall. Hannah's chair remained empty. No one had dared remove it. No one had dared fill it. Adrian stood before it for a long time. Then he ordered the servants to cover the chair, not with black cloth, not as mourning, but with plain white linen. Until the court learns what that seat means, he said. Ethan stood beside him. And after that, Adrian looked at the covered chair. The ring rested in his pocket now, not hidden, carried. After that, he said, it remains empty unless a woman chooses it without being made smaller to fit. Ethan said nothing. But this time, his silence did not accuse. It measured. Adrian accepted that. Outside, the palace bells rang for morning court. The kingdom continued. Badly, quietly. But for the first time, Adrian did not ask who could replace Hannah quickly enough to make the room comfortable again. He let the discomfort remain. Let the empty chair teach. Let the unsigned line shame every man who had once waited for her signature without listening to her voice. And when the council entered, Adrian did not sit first. He stood beside Hannah's covered chair and faced the room that had helped him lose her. Today, he said, we begin with what we failed to see. No one spoke. Good. For once, silence belonged to the truth. Hannah Whitaker did not heal like a woman in a story. There was no single morning when sunlight touched her face and the wound disappeared. There was no dramatic laugh at breakfast. No sudden declaration that Adrian Blackwell no longer mattered. Healing, she learned, was quieter than that. Less graceful. More irritating. It came in small moments that did not know they were miracles until they had already passed. The first week in Reed territory, Hannah slept with a chair pushed against the door. Not because Marcus Reed locked her in. He did not. The lock was on her side. The key sat on her bedside table every night, exactly where she placed it. Still, her body did not believe safety simply because a door agreed to close for her. So she kept the chair there. Heavy oak, angled beneath the handle. A small, ridiculous barricade in a house where no one entered without knocking. No one mocked her for it. That helped. The second week, she stopped waking before dawn to check council ledgers that were no longer her burden. Her eyes still opened in the blue dark. Her hand still reached for a bell cord that did not exist. Her mind still counted tasks before she remembered she had none assigned. No banquet seating. No healer reports. No northern correspondence. No polite breakfast with a man who would ask whether she had slept while already thinking of someone else. Only rain against the window. Only a clean blanket. Only the strange ache of not being needed. At first, she mistook it for emptiness. Then Marcus said, one afternoon while reviewing border maps across the room, "You look guilty when you rest." Hannah glanced up from the book she had not managed to read. "I do not." "You do." She frowned. He did not smile. That made the observation worse. "I am not used to idleness," she said. "Rest is not idleness. It feels like neglect." "Of whom?" The question stopped her. Her hands tightened around the book. "Of everyone." That was the answer she did not say. Of the servants whose disputes she used to settle before Adrian heard complaints. Of the young guards who needed winter cloaks approved. Of the council wives who whispered problems near her tea table because speaking in official rooms was dangerous. Of the treaty margins. Of the palace kitchens. Of every soft place in a hard kingdom that had learned to survive through her attention. And of Adrian. Always Adrian. A man who had mistaken her care for something naturally available, like firewood stacked near the hearth. Hannah looked down. "I do not know who I am when I am not useful." Marcus was silent for a moment. Then he turned one page of the map. "You are still the person asking the question." It was not comfort. That was why it stayed with her. Comfort tried to cover pain. This simply gave it a chair and let it sit honestly. By the third week, Hannah learned the names of the women in the border house. Mara, the healer with silver-streaked hair and hands that smelled of rosemary. June, The kitchen girl who laughed too loudly when nervous. Elena, a widow who managed supply keys and trusted no man who praised patience. They did not call Hannah Luna. Marcus had told them not to. Or perhaps they had chosen not to. Either way, the absence of the title gave her room to breathe. At meals, no one waited for her to speak last. No one washed her hand for a ring. No one asked when she planned to forgive the Alpha King. That question arrived only once. From a visiting merchant's wife who looked at Hannah across the market yard and whispered, not quietly enough, "Is it true you left because of his first love?" The yard went still. Hannah had been holding a basket of apples. She looked at the woman. For a second, the old instinct rose. Smile. Soften. Make the room comfortable. Protect the crown, even from afar. Then she remembered the ring in Adrian's palm. The garden. Claire's lowered eyes. Do not speak to her that way. Hannah placed one apple gently into the basket. No, she said. I left because I had become a place instead of a person. The merchant's wife turned red. No one laughed. No one rushed to fill the silence. Hannah carried the basket inside with hands that shook only after the door closed. Mara found her in the pantry. Good, the healer said. Hannah blinked. What? Your hands are shaking after speaking, not before. That is progress. Hannah stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Small. Broken. Real. It hurt her chest. She laughed anyway. That evening, Marcus found her in the garden behind the border house, sitting on a low stone wall while dust collected in the grass. He did not ask whether she was crying. She was not. He did not ask whether she missed Adrian. Sometimes she did. Not the man at the garden arch. Not the king who defended Claire. But the younger version who had once whispered that she would never stand alone again and trembled when placing a ring on her finger. Missing him felt like touching an old bruise. Painful. Embarrassing. Human. Marcus stood several feet away. Blackwell sent another decree. Hannah looked over. Another? Yes. What kind? Protection for palace attendants. Legal voice for future Lunas. Council contribution records. Hannah looked back at the darkening garden. The wind moved through the herb beds. Rosemary. Mint. Wet earth. Good, she said. Marcus watched her. Only good. What else should it be? Anger. Relief. Satisfaction. Hannah considered that. She waited for something sharp to rise. It did not. Only tiredness. Only a quiet sadness for the woman who had needed those changes before she left. It is good if it protects someone, she said. It does not repair me. Marcus nodded. No, she looked at him then. Many men would have rushed to promise that they could. Marcus did not. He seemed to understand that repair was not a crown another alpha could place on her head. After a moment, he said, there will be a winter council gathering here in 2 weeks. Smaller than Blackwell's. Less gold. More arguing. That sounds terrible. It is. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. I would like you present if you want to be. Hannah's body went still. There it was. The edge. The offer that could become a cage if handled carelessly. Marcus seemed to know it. He added, not as Luna. Not as witness. Not as proof of anything. You know treaty language. You know border supply failures. You may speak or not speak. Leave or stay. No one will be told you belong in the chair. Hannah looked at the garden path. For years, every chair had come with an expectation sewn beneath the cushion. Sit here. Smile here. Sign here. Be grateful here. Stay here. She breathed slowly. And if I say no, then there will be more arguing and worse paperwork. This time, she smiled. A real one. Faint. Tired. Hers. I will think about it. That is all I asked. He turned to leave. Marcus. He stopped. Hannah hesitated, then said, thank you for not making my grief useful. Something in his face softened. Only slightly. Enough to be seen. You are welcome. After he left, Hannah remained in the garden until the lamps inside the border house warmed the windows. She looked at her bare finger. The ring mark had faded. Not entirely, but enough that she had to search for it. That, too, felt like healing. Not forgetting. Not forgiving. Just evidence that something once pressed into her skin no longer had the strength to define its shape. That night, Hannah moved the chair away from her bedroom door. Only a few inches. Not fully. Not yet. She lay in bed, listening to the hallway beyond. Footsteps passed once. They stopped outside her door. A soft knock. Mara sent tea, June called. Hannah looked at the chair. At the key. At the handle no one turned without permission. Her throat tightened. Leave it there, please. All right. The footsteps retreated. No one entered. No one insisted. No one decided her nomen L. Hannah Whitaker returned to a council room because she chose to. That was the difference. Not because a treaty needed her signature. Not because a king needed her calm. Not because a room full of men had already spoken and required a woman's name to make their decisions look honorable. She returned because Marcus Reed had asked once. Then waited. The Winter Council gathering in Reed territory took place in a stone hall smaller than Blackwell's throne chamber and far less beautiful. There were no gold banners. No polished marble. No chandelier large enough to make power look holy. Only long wooden tables. Maps weighted by knives. Cold air slipping beneath the doors. Men and women arguing over grain routes with the blunt exhaustion of people who expected winter to kill anything pride forgot to protect. Hannah sat near the third table, not at the center. Not hidden either. A chair had been placed where she could see the maps and leave without crossing the room if she wished. Marcus had noticed that. Of course he had. He stood at the head of the hall in a dark coat, listening more than speaking. That, too, was unfamiliar. Adrian had filled rooms before hearing them. Marcus let the room reveal itself first. Hannah kept her hands folded in her lap. No ring. No crest. No royal ink waiting beside her. Only a charcoal pencil Marcus had placed near the map without comment. For the first hour, she said nothing. No one forced her to. That almost made speaking harder. At Blackwell, silence had been assigned to her. Here, silence belonged to her. A gray-haired commander tapped one border route with the blunt end of his knife. If we move grain through the East Pass, we avoid the tax post. A woman across from him snorted. And lose 2 wagons to ice before the third ridge. The South Road is longer. The South Road is alive. Murmurs rose. Marcus looked at the map. Then, without turning the moment into performance, asked, Hannah? Every face shifted toward her. Not sharply. Not hungrily. Still, her body remembered. A dozen old rooms rose inside her at once. Councilmen looking through her until they needed her signature. Adrian glancing toward her when a figure failed to add up. Elder Price interrupting her with a smile. Claire watching from a doorway as if patience were something Hannah had invented to make replacement easier. Her throat tightened. Marcus did not repeat the question. He did not rescue her either. He gave her the dignity of deciding whether she would answer. Hannah looked at the map. The East Pass. The South Road. The marked supply depots. She saw the mistake immediately. It almost angered her how quickly usefulness returned. Then she remembered. Knowing a thing did not make her owned by those who needed it. She reached for the charcoal pencil. The South Road will survive longer, she said. Her voice sounded strange in the hall. Soft. Clear. Hers. But not with full wagons. Split the grain at Miller's Bridge. Send 2 light carts east before the frost hardens. Keep the heavy stores south with guard rotation every 12 miles, not 15. The gray-haired commander frowned. 12 slows us. 15 kills tired guards. The room went quiet. Hannah continued before fear could come back. The third ridge does not fail because of distance. It fails because the men arrive cold, hungry, and angry at the officers who pretend bodies work like numbers. No one spoke. Then the woman across the table leaned forward. She is right. The commander looked at Marcus. Marcus did not answer for her. Good. Hannah looked at the commander herself. You will lose fewer hours resting men before they break than replacing them after they do. A long pause. Then the commander gave a reluctant nod. Mark it. Someone moved the wooden pieces on the map. Not dramatically. Not reverently. Simply because she had spoken and the room had listened. Hannah felt something loosen behind her ribs. Not happiness. Not yet. Recognition. Her voice had not disappeared because Adrian failed to value it. It had only been waiting for a room that did not punish it for existing. The council continued. This time, when someone asked about healer distribution, Hannah answered without looking at Marcus first. When a scribe misread a ration number, she corrected it. When an elder suggested lowering widow allotments to preserve patrol funding, Hannah's pencil stopped moving. No, the elder blinked. No. No, the room held its breath. Hannah set the pencil down. If your patrols require widows to eat less, your patrol plan is a confession of poor leadership. A few heads turned. The elder flushed. You speak boldly for a guest. The old Hannah would have softened. The Blackwell Luna would have smiled and wrapped steel in silk. This Hannah was tired of decorating truth so men could survive hearing it. Yes, she said. Guests often notice what residents have taught themselves to excuse. Silence. Then Marcus spoke. Only one sentence. She has the floor. Not protection. Recognition. The difference mattered. The widow allotments remained untouched. By dusk, the council dismissed with worse tempers and better plans. Hannah stepped into the outer corridor before anyone could surround her with praise or questions. Praise, she had learned, could become another leash if a woman was starving enough for it. She found Marcus waiting near the open side door where snow had begun to gather on the stones. You did well, he said. Hannah looked at the falling snow. I was useful. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, yes. Her chest tightened. He continued, and you were respected. Those are not the same thing. She turned her head. The words entered carefully. They did not heal everything. They did not erase Adrian. But they placed one stone over a hole she had been walking around for years. I am still afraid of being needed, she admitted. Marcus nodded. That is reasonable. Most men would tell me not to be. Most men prefer fear to disappear when it inconveniences them. She looked at him then. Snow clung to the dark shoulder of his coat. His face was calm, not soft exactly, but steady in a way that did not require her to shrink. Do you need me? She asked. His answer did not come quickly. She appreciated that. Finally, Marcus said, no, something in her loosened. Then he added, but I value you here. Hannah looked away before he could see too much. Too late. He probably saw enough. They stood in silence while the snow thickened. For once, silence did not demand payment. A rider arrived after sunset. Blackwell colors beneath a plain traveling cloak. Ethan Brooks. Hannah knew him before he dismounted. Marcus glanced at her. Do you want him turned away? The question came first. Always the question. Hannah breathed in. No. I will hear him. Ethan approached slowly, helmet tucked beneath one arm. Respect written into every careful step. He bowed. Not deeply. Not theatrically. Enough. Lady Hannah. She waited. He did not call her Luna. That mercy did not pass unnoticed. I bring no command, Ethan said. Only documents, if you are willing to receive them. He held out a sealed folder. Hannah did not take it immediately. What documents? Copies of the decrees issued since you left. Palace protections. Council reforms. Legal authority for future treaty witnesses. His voice lowered. And a personal letter from His Majesty. The name moved through the corridor like cold under a door. Hannah looked at the folder. Then at Ethan. Did he ask you to persuade me? No. Did he ask whether I had read it? No. What did he ask? Ethan's mouth tightened slightly. To deliver it only if you agreed. To leave if you did not. That sounded like pain learning manners. Hannah accepted the folder. The seal was Blackwell silver. Her hands did not shake. Progress. Is he well? She asked before she could stop herself. Ethan did not pretend not to understand. He is changed. That is not what I asked. No. Ethan said quietly. He is not well. Hannah closed her eyes for 1 second. Old grief touched her. Old tenderness. Old anger. All of it alive. None of it a command. When she opened her eyes, Marcus was not watching her like a man afraid of losing something. He was looking at the snow, giving her privacy inside her own face. Ethan bowed again. I will leave now. Ethan. He stopped. Hannah held the folder against her side. Tell him I received it. Yes, my lady. Tell him nothing else. A faint sadness crossed Ethan's face. As you wish. After he left, Hannah carried the folder to her room. The chair no longer blocked the door. The tea June had brought sat near the window. The lock still turned from the inside. Hannah broke the seal and read the decrees first. Not the letter. She read about Lily. About council wives. About treaty witnesses. About servant protections. Each page hurt in a different place. Good changes. Late changes. Useful changes. Insufficient changes. At the bottom of the folder sat Adrian's letter. No royal title on the outside. Only her name. Hannah. She touched the paper once. Then set it on the table unopened. Not because she hated him. Because she was not ready to let his words enter a room she had only just begun to call hers. That night, she slept without moving the chair back. In the morning, the letter remained unopened. So did the window. Snow covered the border road. For the first time, Hannah did not wonder whether Adrian was watching that same snow from the palace. She wondered instead whether the South grain carts had reached Miller's Bridge before frost hardened the pass. The thought made her smile. Small. Quiet. Hers. She was useful. She was respected. And she was beginning, slowly, to belong to herself without needing usefulness to justify her place. Hannah Whitaker opened Adrian Blackwell's letter in spring. Not the morning after Ethan brought it. Not the week after. Not during the first snow melt, when the roads softened and every rider from the north made her body remember palace corridors. She opened it when the apple trees behind the Reed border house began to bloom. That felt fair. Winter had held enough grief. The letter had remained in the top drawer of her small writing desk for nearly 3 months. Unanswered, unburned, unworshipped. Some nights, she heard it more clearly than the wind. Some mornings, she forgot it existed until her hand brushed the drawer handle and old pain lifted its head. She did not open it because she missed him, though sometimes she did. She did not open it because she was ready to forgive him. She did not know whether forgiveness was a door, a road, or simply a room she might never need to enter. She opened it because she no longer feared what his words might do to her. That was different. Outside her window, June was laughing in the herb garden. Mara scolded someone for crushing rosemary beneath a boot. Marcus Reed stood near the lower gate speaking with 2 commanders, dark coat open in the mild air, his posture calm, his attention steady. This place had not healed Hannah by claiming her. It had healed her by not demanding proof that she deserved to remain. She sat at the desk and broke the seal. The letter was short. That surprised her. Adrian had always been capable of making language sound like architecture when he wanted to defend himself. This was not defense. Hannah, I will not ask you to come home. I understand now that home cannot be the place where a woman must disappear to be seen. I will not tell you I have changed enough to deserve another chance. Change that asks for reward is only another kind of bargain. The decrees are not apologies. They are debts paid too late to the wrong person and, I hope, early enough for someone else. I loved you badly. I needed you loudly and respected you quietly, which is another way of saying I failed to respect you at all when it mattered. You once told me to begin with the women still inside my palace. I have. I should have begun with the woman beside me. Adrian. Hannah read it once. Then again. Her hands did not shake. That was how she knew the letter had arrived in the right season. It hurt. Of course it did. Truth could be kind and still cut going in. But it did not pull her backward. It did not turn the room into a palace chamber. It did not place a ring back on her finger or a title back on her shoulders. It only sat there. A late thing. A real thing. Not enough. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the desk. For a long moment, she looked at her bare hand. The ring mark was gone. Completely. She had noticed 2 weeks ago while washing ink from her fingers after the spring supply council. She had stared at the skin longer than necessary, waiting for grief. Instead, she had felt quiet. Not empty. Quiet. A knock came at the open door. Marcus stood outside, not entering. He never entered without being invited, even now. Especially now. The Eastern delegation arrived early, he said. They are arguing already. Hannah looked up. About the bridge toll? And widow allotments. She sighed. Of course. The corner of his mouth moved. Do you want to come down? Not need. Want. He always gave the word room. Hannah glanced at Adrian's letter, then at the sunlight on the floor. Yes, she said. In a moment, Marcus's gaze touched the folded paper once. He did not ask. That, too, was why she answered. I read it. He nodded. And she considered the question. Once, she would have searched herself for the answer a man wanted to hear. Now she waited for her own. He finally understood, she said. Marcus was quiet. Does that change anything? Hannah looked through the window at the blooming trees. Yes. Marcus did not move. She turned back to him. It changes him. Something almost like sadness passed through his eyes. Not fear. Never fear disguised as love. And you? Hannah breathed in slowly. The air smelled of apple blossoms, ink, and rain-wet stone. I was already changing. The words felt simple. Complete. Marcus nodded once. I will tell them you are coming. He left without asking more. Hannah took a fresh sheet of paper from the drawer. For a moment, she thought she would write a reply. Not a long one. Not a cruel one. Something true. But her hand stayed still above the page. Then she understood. Some endings did not need to answer. Some women did not need to prove they had forgiven by reopening the door. She folded the blank paper and placed it beneath Adrian's letter. Not a response. A boundary. Downstairs, the council hall was loud. Beautifully loud. No one stopped arguing when Hannah entered. That made her smile. They had learned not to perform respect by becoming silent. They showed it by making room for her voice when she chose to use it. Mara sat at the side table with healer records. June stood near the kitchen passage, listening shamelessly. Marcus occupied the head of the room, but did not dominate it. When Hannah approached the map table, the gray-haired commander from Winter slid the grain records toward her without ceremony. "We changed the eastern route like you suggested," he said. "Fewer losses." Hannah picked up the report. "Good. Now convince Reed the bridge toll is theft." Marcus looked mildly offended. "It is not theft. It is very organized theft," Hannah said. The room laughed. Not at her. With her. The sound moved through Hannah like sunlight finding a place long closed. For the rest of the morning, she spoke when she had something to say, stayed silent when she did not, left once to drink tea in the corridor because the room grew too warm, and no one treated her absence like betrayal. That was freedom, she thought. Not doing whatever she wanted without consequence. Being allowed to return to herself without someone calling it disloyal. Near sunset, a rider came from Blackwell territory. Not Ethan this time. A young palace courier with nervous hands and dust on his boots. The hall quieted when he entered. Old habits still lived in walls. The courier bowed to Marcus, then to Hannah. "My lady." Hannah recognized him after a moment. One of the younger stable boys who used to open carriage doors during royal ceremonies. He looked older. Or perhaps she had only learned how young frightened people were when palaces trained them to stand still. "I bring notice from Alpha King Adrian Blackwell," he said. Marcus glanced at Hannah. "Her choice. Always." Hannah nodded. The courier swallowed and read from a sealed notice. "By order of the Blackwell Council, the Northern Treaty has been amended to remove mandatory Luna witness without active advisory authority. The former Luna chair remains vacant by royal declaration until freely accepted by a future holder. Lady Claire Monroe has departed the palace for Monroe lands. Elder Samuel Price has resigned from royal council service." The room was silent. The courier lowered the paper. Then, more softly, he added, "There is no personal message." Hannah closed her eyes. Not from pain. From something quieter. Respect, perhaps. At last. Adrian had not sent a plea hidden inside reform. He had not wrapped progress around longing and placed it at her feet. He had done the work where he was, and left her where she was. "Good. Thank you," Hannah said. The courier looked startled by the gentleness. He bowed again. Before he left, Hannah stepped closer. "Are the servants being treated well?" His face changed. Just slightly. "Enough for truth." "Better, my lady." "Better is not finished." "No, my lady." "Tell Lily Carter I remember her." The boy's eyes softened. "I will." After he rode away, Hannah walked outside alone. The evening had turned gold over the fields. Blossoms drifted from the apple trees like pale snow. The road north lay beyond the boundary stones, clear now after winter. For the first time, she looked at it without feeling either longing or fear. Only recognition. That road had brought her here. That was all. Marcus found her near the low wall. He stood beside her, leaving space between their shoulders. "Will you ever go back?" he asked. Hannah did not misunderstand. He was not asking whether she would return to Adrian. He was asking whether the past still held a door she needed to walk through. "Maybe one day," she said. "For council matters. For Lily. For the women still there." Marcus nodded. "And for him." Hannah watched the blossoms fall. "I hope he becomes someone who can live with what he lost without turning it into another claim." "That is generous." "No," she said. "It is peaceful." The distinction mattered. She turned toward Marcus. "And you?" His brow lifted slightly. "Me? Are you going to ask me to stay?" The question stood between them. Soft. Dangerous. Honest. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "No," something in her chest warmed. He continued, "I am going to tell you there is a place here if you want it. Not mine to give. Not yours to earn. Simply open." Hannah looked at him. The man who had not touched what was broken. The alpha who had asked shelter or claim and accepted the answer. The quiet presence who had not made her grief useful. She smiled then. Not fully. Not brightly. But without fear. "I want to stay for now." Marcus nodded. For now is enough. It was. For once, enough did not mean smaller. It meant honest. As dusk deepened, Hannah walked back toward the border house beside him. Not behind. Not claimed. Beside. In her room, Adrian's letter remained folded on the desk. She did not hide it. She did not burn it. She did not carry it like a wound. It was part of the story, not the end. The next morning, Hannah wrote her own name at the top of a fresh council report. Not Luna Hannah Whitaker Blackwell. Not Adrian's wife. Not the woman who understood her place. Only Hannah Whitaker. The ink dried cleanly. Outside, the apple trees bloomed. In Blackwell Palace, an empty chair remained covered until someone worthy of it chose it freely. In Reed territory, a woman once mistaken for a position learned the shape of her own life. And far away, an alpha king held a silver ring not as a promise, not as a claim, but as the quiet punishment of finally understanding too late. Hannah did not return. She did not need to. The place she had been told to understand no longer existed. She had outgrown it. She had become something no crown could offer, no council could assign, and no man could give away. Herself.